Mom called me selfish for buying a house alone, until she saw whose name was on the deed. I never thought the people I loved most would be the ones to break me completely. Especially not in front of everyone who mattered. But there I was, standing in my childhood living room, holding the deed to my new house while my mother's words cut through me like shattered glass. Isabella, you're being selfish. This is just another one of your impulsive decisions. It wasn't just the humiliation that burned, it was the way my sister Sarah smirked from the corner, nodding in agreement. I never thought she could enjoy my pain like that. But what I didn't realize was how much deeper her betrayal went. How many secrets were hiding behind those knowing glances between her and mom. I stood there, feeling invisible and worthless. Clutching that deed like it was my lifeline, I realized I had a choice. I could continue to let their words define me, let them convince me I was nothing more than a disappointment, or I could choose to change everything. The weight of that moment pressed down on me, years of being overlooked, dismissed, treated like I didn't matter. I didn't know how it would unfold. But one thing was crystal clear, my life would never be the same again. What they didn't know was that the name on that deed would change everything they thought they knew about me. My name is Isabella. And I've spent 32 years learning what it feels like to be the family disappointment. You know that feeling when you walk into a room and conversations suddenly shift, when eyes avoid yours, when you realize you're the topic everyone was just discussing? That was my everyday reality. The day I bought my house should have been the proudest moment of my life. I'd saved for 7 years, working double shifts at the hospital, skipping vacations, living in that cramped studio apartment just to make this dream happen. When I finally held those keys in my trembling hands, I felt something I hadn't experienced in years, pure, unbridled joy. I rushed to my family's house, practically floating through the front door, clutching the deed like a trophy. Mom, Sarah, I did it. I bought a house. The words tumbled out of me, breathless with excitement. I expected hugs, maybe tears of pride, definitely celebration. Instead, silence stretched across the room like a chasm. Mom set down her coffee cup with that deliberate slowness she used when she was about to deliver judgment. Sarah didn't even look up from her phone, but I caught that slight upturn of her lips, the one that meant trouble. Isabella, you're being selfish, Mom said, her voice carrying that familiar tone of disappointment I'd grown up hearing. This is just another one of your impulsive decisions. Did you even think about anyone else? What about Sarah and the kids? They could have used that down payment money. The words hit me like physical blows. Sarah finally looked up, her eyes gleaming with something that looked almost like satisfaction. Yeah, Izzy. It's pretty selfish when you think about it. Some of us have actual responsibilities. I stood there, my joy crumbling into dust around my feet. The deed felt heavy in my hands now, not like a symbol of achievement but like evidence of my selfishness. But I worked for this, I whispered, my voice barely audible. I saved every penny. That's exactly the problem, Mom continued, shaking her head. Always thinking about yourself first. When are you going to grow up and consider your family? The room began to spin slightly. This wasn't how it was supposed to go. I had imagined their faces lighting up, maybe Mom finally saying she was proud of me. Instead, I was being scolded like a child for achieving something I'd dreamed about for years. Will I choose to stay silent, or will I take control of my own story? Standing there in that suffocating silence, my mind began to drift back through the years, connecting dots I'd been too naive or too hopeful to see before. This wasn't the first time. It was just the loudest, most obvious betrayal in a symphony of smaller cuts that had been bleeding me dry for decades. I remembered my high school graduation. While other families cheered and took endless photos, mine had left early because Sarah needed to get home to study for finals. Isabella will understand, Mom had said, as if my milestone was just an inconvenience to be managed around more important things. Then there was my nursing school graduation. I'd worked nights, weekends, summers, exhausting myself to graduate summa cum laude. The day I walked across that stage, Sarah announced her pregnancy. Within minutes, my achievement became background noise to the real celebration. A nurse is nice, honey, Mom had said absently, already planning baby showers, but Sarah's giving us a grandchild. The pattern was so clear now it took my breath away. Every birthday overshadowed by Sarah's latest drama. Every promotion I earned dismissed as nice, while her part-time job struggles warranted family meetings and financial support. When I got my first apartment, Mom worried I was being too independent. When Sarah moved back home at 28 with 2 kids and no plan, she was smart to accept help. I thought about all the family dinners where conversations stopped when I entered the room, resuming only when I left to help in the kitchen. The inside jokes I was never part of. The whispered phone calls that ended abruptly when I walked by. The way Sarah would exchange glances with Mom whenever I shared good news, as if my happiness was somehow suspicious. The most painful memory surfaced like a knife twisting in an old wound. Last Christmas, I'd given Mom a beautiful necklace I'd saved for months to buy. She'd opened it, smiled politely, and set it aside. 5 minutes later, Sarah handed her a homemade card from the kids. And Mom burst into tears of joy, clutching it to her chest like it was made of gold. "This is the most beautiful gift I've ever received," she'd sobbed. While my expensive necklace sat forgotten on the coffee table. I'd spent that night crying in my car in their driveway, wondering what was wrong with me, why I could never be enough. Why my love felt like a burden they had to tolerate rather than a gift they cherished. Now, holding this deed that represented years of sacrifice and determination, I realized something that made my stomach turn. They weren't just dismissing my achievements, they were actively resenting them. My success somehow threatened their narrative that I was the family disappointment. Can I confront the hidden wounds, or will they remain buried forever? Something shifted in me as I stood there, surrounded by the echoes of their criticism and the weight of years of accumulated pain. Maybe it was the way Sarah's smirk had lingered just a second too long, or the casual cruelty in Mom's voice when she called me selfish. But in that moment, I felt something I hadn't experienced in decades: anger. Pure, clean, righteous anger, not the self-directed anger I was used to, the kind that made me question everything about myself and wonder why I wasn't enough. This was different. This was the kind of anger that burns away confusion and leaves clarity in its wake. They were wrong. They had always been wrong. I looked down at the deed in my hands, really looked at it, and saw it for what it truly was: proof that I was capable of extraordinary things. I had worked myself to exhaustion, saved every penny, made countless sacrifices, and achieved something remarkable. The fact that they couldn't see it, couldn't celebrate it, couldn't even pretend to be happy for me, that wasn't a reflection of my worth. It was a reflection of theirs. "You know what?" I said, my voice steadier than it had been in years. Both Mom and Sarah looked at me with surprise, as if they'd forgotten I was still in the room. "I think I understand now." I folded the deed carefully and slipped it into my purse. Along with every expectation I'd ever had that they would change, that they would suddenly see me, love me, value me the way I'd always hoped. "You're right," I continued, watching their faces shift from surprise to confusion. "I have been selfish. I've been selfishly hoping that someday you'd be proud of me. I've been selfishly believing that if I just tried harder, achieved more, gave more, you'd finally see my worth." The room fell silent again, but this time it didn't crush me. This time, I owned it. "But I'm done being that kind of selfish," I said, feeling strength flow through my words like water through a dam that had finally burst. "From now on, I'm going to be a different kind of selfish. The kind that protects my peace. The kind that doesn't waste energy on people who've already decided I'm not worth celebrating." I moved toward the door, each step feeling lighter than the last. For 32 years, I'd been playing by their rules, accepting their version of who I was supposed to be. But that game was over now. "Isabella, don't be dramatic," Mom called after me, but her voice lacked its usual authority. Maybe she heard something different in my tone too. I paused at the doorway and turned back one last time. "I'm not being dramatic, Mom. I'm being honest. And the honesty is this: I'm done apologizing for taking up space in my own life. Can I find the courage to change my life, or will I hesitate when it matters most?" Driving home from that confrontation, my hands steady on the wheel for the first time in years, I felt something unexpected blooming in my chest: anticipation. Not the nervous, desperate kind I was used to, but the quiet thrill of someone who finally held all the cards and knew exactly how to play them. They thought they knew me so well: predictable Isabella, always trying to please, always accepting their scraps of affection, always grateful for whatever attention they threw my way. But they had no idea what I'd really done when I bought that house. They'd been so busy judging the decision itself that they hadn't bothered to ask the right questions. I pulled into my driveway, and sat in the car for a moment, savoring the weight of what I knew and they didn't. The deed wasn't just proof of my independence. It was so much more than that, and when they found out the truth, it would shatter every assumption they'd ever made about who I was and what I was capable of. Inside my apartment, I spread the paperwork across my kitchen table like a general planning a campaign. The deed, the mortgage documents, the insurance papers, everything that told the real story of what I'd accomplished. I traced my finger along one particular line, the one that would change everything when they saw it. The beauty of my plan wasn't in its complexity, it was in its simplicity. I wouldn't have to lie or manipulate or scheme. I would just have to wait for the right moment to reveal what was already true, what had been true all along. The truth was my weapon, and it was sharper than any accusation they'd ever hurled at me. I thought about Sarah's smirk. The way she'd nodded along with Mom's criticism as if she had any right to judge my choices. Sarah, who still lived in the bedroom she'd had in high school, who brought her laundry to Mom every week, who had never paid her own bills without family help. She thought she knew what responsibility looked like, but she was about to learn something new about it, and Mom was going to have the hardest time with this revelation. She'd built her identity around being the family matriarch, the one who knew what was best for everyone, the one whose approval mattered most. When she realized what I'd done, how wrong she'd been, it would force her to confront some uncomfortable truths about herself. The timing had to be perfect. Not in the heat of anger, where they could dismiss it as me being dramatic or emotional. It needed to be calm, deliberate, undeniable. I wanted them to be sitting down when the truth hit them, wanted to watch their faces change as understanding dawned. I could invite them to see the house. Let them walk through it, comment on my impulsive decision, maybe even offer more unsolicited advice about my financial irresponsibility. And then, casually, I'd hand them the paperwork. Just let them read it for themselves. Will I feel victorious when it's over, or will the consequences leave me feeling empty? 3 weeks later, I sent the invitation. Simple, straightforward, I'd love to show you the house. Sunday at 2 p.m.? Mom responded immediately, probably eager to inspect my impulsive purchase and offer more guidance about my poor life choices. Sarah agreed to come too, bringing the kids so they could see what Aunt Isabella bought. The tone in their messages was exactly what I expected, patronizing warmth mixed with curiosity. They were coming to see the damage I'd done to my financial future. To walk through my selfish decision and probably offer advice on how to minimize the disaster. I spent Saturday cleaning every surface until it gleamed. Arranging flowers in strategic locations, preparing for this performance. Every detail mattered. I wanted them to see what their irresponsible daughter had actually accomplished. Sunday arrived gray and drizzly, matching my mood perfectly. I watched from my window as their car pulled into the driveway, saw them looking up at the house with expressions I couldn't quite read from that distance. Sarah was pointing at the roof, probably already calculating repair costs. Mom had that pinched look she got when she was preparing to deliver constructive criticism. When I opened the door, Mom immediately launched into her inspection mode. But not before pulling me into a hug that felt more like an assessment than affection. "Oh, Isabella, it's lovely, but honey, do you think it might be too much house for just you?" she said, stepping inside and running her fingers along the crown molding. "The heating bills alone must be enormous." Sarah followed, her eyes calculating square footage and probably estimating my mortgage payments. She set her diaper bag down without asking, already claiming space. "It's definitely bigger than I expected," she said, bouncing her youngest on her hip. "Must have cost a fortune. Did you at least get a good rate?" I led them through each room, watching them catalog my choices with the intensity of appraisers. In the kitchen, Mom opened cabinets without permission, tisk at the empty shelves. "So much space you'll never use," she murmured. I let them wander. Listen to their comments about the hardwood floors, so impractical with kids running around someday. The updated kitchen, a necessary expense when the old counters were perfectly fine. And the master bedroom, why do you need so much space for one person? Every criticism felt like a feather now, weightless and irrelevant. The kids were running through the halls, their voices echoing in the empty spaces, and Sarah didn't even try to quiet them. "At least they have room to play," she said, as if granting me the smallest possible compliment. "The backyard is nice," Mom admitted grudgingly, looking out through the sliding glass doors. "But the maintenance is going to be overwhelming for someone working hospital shifts. You know how demanding your schedule is. And the property taxes," Sarah added, settling into my living room like she belonged there, spreading out the kids' snacks on my coffee table without asking. "How are you possibly affording this on a nurse's salary? Please tell me you didn't get some predatory loan or put everything on credit cards." Their concern felt manufactured, performed. They weren't worried about my financial security, they were fascinated by what they assumed was my inevitable failure. This was the moment. I felt that familiar calm descend over me, the same feeling I got in the ER when everything was chaos, but I knew exactly what needed to be done. My heart was steady, my hands sure. "Actually," I said, reaching for the folder of documents I'd left strategically on the coffee table, "I wanted to show you something." I moved Sarah's crackers aside gently and placed the folder in the center. "The paperwork might interest you." I handed the deed to Mom first. Watching her face as she unfolded it with the same careful attention she'd given to examining my crown molding, her expression shifted from mild interest to confusion. Her eyebrows drawing together as she read the first line. Then something changed, her eyes widened, her mouth opened slightly. And I watched understanding hit her like a physical blow. "Isabella," she whispered. Her voice barely audible, the paper trembling in her hands. "Whose name is this?" Sarah leaned over, reading over Mom's shoulder, and I watched the color drain from her face as the words sank in. For the first time all afternoon, both kids had gone quiet, sensing the shift in the adult energy around them. "Will I feel relieved after this, or will it leave me questioning everything?" "Isabella Rose Martinez and Margaret Elena Martinez," Mom read aloud, her voice cracking on her own name. "Joint ownership with rights of survivorship." The silence that followed was deafening. Sarah's mouth opened and closed like she was trying to speak underwater. Mom's hands trembled as she held the deed, reading it again and again as if the words might change. I could hear the kids playing in the other room. Their laughter a strange counterpoint to the heavy quiet in the living room. "You put my name on it," Mom whispered, looking up at me with an expression I'd never seen before, something between wonder and devastation. "You bought this house for both of us." I nodded, my throat tight. "I wanted you to have security, Mom. I know you worry about retirement, about what happens if something goes wrong with the house or if you need long-term care. This was supposed to be your safety net." The words felt foreign in my mouth now, like I was explaining someone else's motivations. Sarah sank into the couch, the deed falling from her slack fingers. "That's why you worked all those double shifts," she said slowly, pieces clicking into place. "That's why you never went on vacation, why you lived in that tiny apartment, why you drove that old car until it literally died. You were saving for this. For both of us," I corrected, though my voice felt hollow now. I thought when you saw it, you'd understand that everything I do is for this family. That I'm not selfish, I just show love differently." Mom's eyes filled with tears, and they spilled over before she could stop them. She pressed the deed to her chest like it was something precious and fragile. "Isabella, I don't understand. After everything we said, after how we treated you that day, why would you still?" "Because that's who I am," I said simply. "I don't stop loving people because they hurt me." Sarah was crying now too, ugly tears that made her face blotchy. "God, Isabella, we're such awful people. We stood here for an hour criticizing everything about this place. Talking about your financial irresponsibility. And all this time you were thinking about Mom's future," she finished, her voice breaking. "You were being the daughter we should have been." For a moment, I felt a flicker of the satisfaction I'd been hoping for. Finally, she could see me clearly. Finally, she understood how wrong she'd been. But as the tears spilled down both their faces, something unexpected happened. Instead of feeling victorious, I felt empty. Hollow. Like I'd won a contest I no longer wanted to participate in. Watching them cry didn't heal the years of dismissal and criticism. It didn't erase the Christmas mornings when my gifts were forgotten or the graduations where my achievements were overshadowed. Their devastation felt almost too big, too dramatic. And I realized that this moment, their shock and remorse, wasn't actually what I needed. "Isabella. I'm so sorry," Mom choked out, reaching for my hands. "I had no idea. I thought you were just being impulsive again, not thinking about anyone else. I didn't know you were thinking about me, about my future, about what I might need." The kids had wandered back into the room, sensing the emotional gravity but not understanding it. Sarah's youngest climbed onto her lap, and she held him close while tears continued to fall. "We're so sorry, Izzy," Sarah said, using the nickname she hadn't called me in years. "We completely misunderstood. This is incredible, this is the most generous, thoughtful thing anyone has ever done. And we were so cruel. I should have felt vindicated. I should have felt the sweet taste of being proven right, of watching them realize their mistake. Instead, I felt a strange mix of sadness and disappointment. Their apologies, while genuine, couldn't undo the pattern of 32 years. They were sorry they'd misjudged this one act, but what about all the others? What about the lifetime of feeling invisible? "I need some air," I said, stepping toward the sliding glass door. My legs felt unsteady, like I'd been holding my breath for too long. "Isabella." "Wait," Mom called, but I was already outside, through the glass. I could hear them talking in hushed tones. Probably dissecting every harsh word they'd spoken, every assumption they'd made. I could see Sarah gesturing emphatically, Mom wiping her eyes with tissues from her purse, standing in my backyard, our backyard. I realized something troubling. I had gotten exactly what I wanted, their shock, their remorse, their sudden recognition of my worth. But it felt hollow, like winning a game I no longer wanted to play. The victory tasted like ash in my mouth. What I'd really wanted, I understood now, wasn't their guilt. It was their love. And love given out of guilt isn't really love at all. Has revenge really brought me peace, or is there more healing to be done? Standing alone in the backyard, surrounded by the evening quiet, I had an epiphany that hit me like a gentle wave rather than a crashing realization. All this time, I'd been fighting the wrong battle. The grass was soft under my feet, still slightly damp from the morning dew. I could hear the distant sound of traffic, the neighbor's dog barking, life continuing normally while my world shifted on its axis. I realized I wasn't angry anymore. The fire that had burned in me for weeks had transformed into something else, clarity. I hadn't put Mom's name on the deed to teach them a lesson or to prove how generous I was. I had done it because I loved her, because taking care of the people I cared about felt natural and right. The fact that they couldn't see it initially didn't diminish the beauty of that choice, it only reflected their own limitations. Not mine. I thought about the Isabella who had walked into their living room 3 weeks ago, desperately seeking validation for her achievement. That woman had been carrying the weight of everyone else's opinions, measuring her worth by their reactions. Living her life as if she needed permission to be proud of herself, but standing here now. In the garden I would tend and the space I would fill with my own choices. I realized something profound: I didn't need their approval to know my worth. I never had. The sliding door opened behind me, and Mom stepped outside, her face still puffy from crying, clutching a tissue in her hand. "Isabella, can we talk?" I turned to face her, and for the first time in our relationship, I felt like we were meeting as equals. "Of course." She settled into one of the patio chairs I'd bought with such hope, chairs I'd imagined us sitting in together on peaceful mornings. "I've been thinking about everything, not just today, but years of everything," she said, her voice thick with emotion. "I realize I've been unfair to you in ways I didn't even understand. I kept waiting for you to need us the way Sarah does, and when you didn't, I convinced myself it meant you didn't care as much." Her words were healing. But they weren't the healing I'd thought I needed. They felt like bandages on wounds that had already begun to close themselves. "You were so independent, so capable," she continued. "You never asked for help, never seemed to struggle the way we expected. I think I resented that, in a way. It made me feel less needed." "Mom, I appreciate that. I really do. But I need you to understand something too." She nodded, waiting. Her eyes red-rimmed but focused completely on me. "I can't keep living my life trying to prove I'm worthy of love," I said, my voice steady and sure. "What I did with this house, putting your name on it, I did that because I love you. Not because I needed you to love me back in a particular way." Sarah joined us on the porch, having settled the kids inside with a movie. She looked exhausted, wrung out from the emotional upheaval. "Isabella, we want to make this right. All of it. The years of taking you for granted, of not seeing how much you do, how much you sacrifice." I looked at both of them, these women who had shaped so much of my pain and, inadvertently, so much of my strength. The evening air was cooling, and somewhere in the distance, I could smell someone grilling dinner. The scent of charcoal and family gatherings. "You don't need to make anything right," I said, and I meant it. "I need to make something right with myself." "What do you mean?" Mom asked, leaning forward. "I mean I need to stop waiting for external validation to feel good about who I am. I'm a good person. I work hard, I care deeply, I make sacrifices for people I love. Whether anyone else sees that or celebrates it doesn't change the truth of it." The words felt like sunlight breaking through clouds. For 32 years, I had been carrying around this belief that love was something you earned through perfect behavior, that acceptance was a prize awarded by others. But love, real love, was something you gave freely, including to yourself. "I want to rebuild our relationship," Sarah said quietly. "I want to be the sister you deserve. And I want to be the mother I should have been," Mom added. I felt something warm bloom in my chest, not the desperate gratitude I would have felt months ago, but something calmer. Appreciation mixed with boundaries. "I'd like that too," I said. "But it has to be real. Not built on guilt or obligation, but on who we actually are." The sun was setting now, painting the sky in shades of pink and orange. We sat in comfortable silence for a moment, three women beginning to understand each other in a way we never had before. Am I ready to move forward, or is there still something I need to let go of? 6 months later, I'm sitting in my kitchen, our kitchen, on a Saturday morning, watching Mom water the herb garden we planted together in the spring. The morning light filters through the windows, casting everything in a golden glow that feels like contentment made visible. She moves slowly among the basil and rosemary, her silver hair catching the sunlight. Wearing the gardening gloves I bought her for Mother's Day. We've established routines now. She handles the garden, I manage the inside plants. And we both take turns with the bird feeder that attracts cardinals to our window. The transformation hasn't been instant or dramatic. It's been gradual, like watching a sunrise, so slow you don't notice the change moment by moment, but suddenly everything is illuminated. Mom asks about my work now, really asks, wanting to know about my patients and the challenges I face. She's learned the names of my colleagues and remembers when I mention someone going through a difficult time. Sarah stops by most weekends now. Not out of obligation or drama, but because she genuinely enjoys spending time here. Last Saturday, she helped me reorganize the garage and told me about her plans to go back to school. The kids love the backyard, and she's become the sister I always hoped she could be: supportive, present, real. Our relationship isn't perfect, but it's honest now. Built on who we actually are rather than who we thought we were supposed to be. She brings dinner sometimes. And we eat together on the patio while the children play. These moments feel precious because they're chosen, not obligated. When she compliments the house now, it's not with the sharp edge of envy but with genuine appreciation. "You created something beautiful here," she told me last week. And I could hear that she meant it. Mom moved in officially 3 months ago. Not because she had to, but because we both wanted to share this space. The transition was smoother than I expected. She brings her morning coffee to the patio and tells me about her book club meetings and the volunteers she works with at the senior center. I tell her about my patients and the new nursing program I'm considering. We exist together in a way that feels natural and peaceful. Two women who finally understand that love doesn't require performance. Some mornings, I find notes she's left me on the counter, little encouragements about my work or reminders that she's proud of me. Not the desperate pride of someone trying to make amends, but the quiet acknowledgement of someone who finally sees clearly. The most remarkable change, though, is the one I feel inside myself. That desperate hunger for approval, the constant anxiety about whether I was enough, it's gone. Not because anyone convinced me I was worthy, but because I finally convinced myself. I've learned to celebrate my own victories, to acknowledge my own kindness, to sit with my own company and feel genuinely content. When I got promoted to charge nurse last month, I didn't wait for anyone else's reaction to know I should be proud. I took myself out to dinner at the nicest restaurant in town and savored every moment of my own success. Then I came home and told Mom about it, and her excitement felt like a bonus rather than a necessity. I've started painting again, something I gave up in college because it seemed impractical. My watercolors line the hallway now, imperfect but beautiful, created for the joy of creating rather than for anyone's approval. Mom often stops to look at them, not to critique but to appreciate. The house has become exactly what I intended it to be, a sanctuary, a symbol of security, a place where love lives quietly in everyday moments. But more than that, it's become proof that I can trust my own judgment. That my instincts about what's right and good are reliable. I think about that woman who stood in her family's living room 6 months ago, clutching a deed and feeling worthless despite her incredible achievement. I want to tell her that the validation she was seeking was already inside her, waiting to be discovered. I want to tell her that the people who love you don't need to understand every choice you make, they just need to trust that you're making them from a place of wisdom and care. Yesterday, Mom found me organizing the closet and said, "Isabella, I'm so proud of the woman you've become." And while her words felt warm and healing, they weren't the words I'd been waiting my whole life to hear. By the time she said them, I had already learned to be proud of myself. The deed still sits in my filing cabinet. Both our names side by side, but it's no longer proof of anything except this: some of the most beautiful acts of love happen quietly, without fanfare, without immediate recognition. They happen because someone decides that caring for others is worth the effort, worth the sacrifice, worth the misunderstanding. I am enough. I have always been enough. And now, finally, I know it too. The morning sun climbs higher, and Mom comes inside with fresh basil for our lunch, her cheeks pink from the gentle warmth. We move around each other in the kitchen with the easy rhythm of people who have found their peace, together and within themselves. She hums while she rinses the herbs, and I find myself humming along. This is what home feels like, not a place where you have to earn your belonging, but a place where your belonging is simply, quietly, absolutely true.